novel, At Night All Blood is Black. It's a wonderful novel, a very small novel which can be read in maybe 10 hours. Uh, in fact, loud reading is very good for improving your pronunciation, stress, accent, and comprehension. So we continue the reading of this beautiful novel by David Diop. We are in chapter number 4. Please listen. God's truth. On the day of his death, it took me no time to find Mademba Diop disemboweled on the battlefield. I know, I understand what happened. Mademba told me before his hands began trembling, while he was still asking me nicely as a friend to finish him off. He was in the middle of full-blown attack against the enemy on the other side, gun in his left hand and machete in his right. His performance was in full swing. He was fully playing the savage when he fell upon an enemy from the other side who was pretending to be dead. Madame Diop leaned in to look casually in passing before moving on. He stopped to look at a dead enemy who was only pretending. He stared at him because, even still, he had his doubts. A brief instant, the face of the enemy from the other side was in grey, like the face of dead people, white or black. This one looked like it was playing dead. Take no prisoners, finish him with the machete, Mademba Mademba thought. Don't let down your guard. Kill this half-dead enemy from the other side a second time, just to be safe, so as never to have to feel bad about one of your brothers in arms, one of your friends, taking the same route and getting caught. While he's thinking about his brothers in arms, about his friends, whom he must protect from his half dead enemy, while he pictures this half dead enemy dealing a blow to someone other than himself, maybe to me, his more than brother, who may as well be him, while he is telling himself that he must be vigilant for others. He is not being vigilant for himself. Mademba told me sweetly as a friend, still smiling, that the enemy had opened his eyes wide before tearing open Mademba's stomach from top to bottom in a single slash with the bayonet he had held hidden in his right hand beneath a fold of his big coat. Madem was still smiling about the half-dead enemy's attack on him, told me calmly that there was nothing he could have done. He told me at the beginning, when he wasn't yet suffering so much, not long before his first plea to, as his friend finished him off, his first plea addressed to me is more than brother Alpha Nadia, youngest son of the old man. Before Madamba could react, before he could take revenge, the enemy, who still had some life in him, fled back to his line. Between his first and second place, I asked Madamba to describe the enemy from the other side who had disemboweled him. He has blue eyes, Madamba murmured. As I lay by his side, looking at the sky crisscrossed with metal, I asked again, God's truth. All I can tell you is that he had blue eyes. I asked again and again, is he tall? Is he short? Is he good looking? Is he ugly? and Mademba Diop each time responded that it was in the enemy from the other side I should kill, that it was too late, that the enemy had had the good luck to survive. The person I now had to kill a second time to finish off was him, Mademba. But God's truth, I didn't really listen to Mademba, my childhood friend, my more than brother. God's truth, I thought only of gutting the half dead, blue eyed enemy. I thought of disemboweling the enemy from the other side, and I neglected on my own Mademba Geo. I listened to the voice of vengeance. I was inhuman from the moment of Mademba Diop's second plea when he said, "Forget the blue eyed enemy. Kill me now because I'm suffering too much. We are the same age. We were circumcised on the same day. We lived at my house. I watched you grow up and you watched me. Because of that, you can make fun of me. I can cry in front of you. I can ask you anything. We are more than brothers because we chose each other as brothers. Please, Alpha, don't let me die like this. My guts in the air, my stomach devoured by a gnawing pain. I don't know if the blue eyed enemy is tall, if he's short, if he's good looking, or if he's ugly. I don't know if he's young like us or if he's our father's age. He was lucky. He saved himself. He is no longer important. If you are my brother, my childhood friend, if you are the one I have always known, the one I love like I love my mother and my father, then I beg you a second time to slit my throat. Do you enjoy hearing me mourn like a little boy, watching as my dignity is chased away by shame? I refused. Ah, I refused. I'm sorry, Mademba Diop. I'm sorry, my friend, my more than brother, not to have listened to you with my heart. I know, I understand. I shouldn't have turned my mind toward the blue eyed enemy from the other side. I know, I understand. I shouldn't have been thinking about the vengeance demanded by my brain, furrowed by your tears, seeded by your cries, when you weren't even dead yet. But I heard a powerful and commanding voice that voiced me to ignore your suffering. Do not kill your best friend, your more than brother. It is sin for you to take his life. Don't mistake yourself for the hand of God. Don't mistake yourself for the hand of the devil. Alpha Nadier. Could you stand before Madamba's father and mother, knowing that it was you who killed him, that it was you who finished the work of the blue eyed enemy? No, I know, I understand. I shouldn't have listened to the voice that exploded in my head. I should have shut it up while there was still time. I should already have been thinking for myself. I should, Mademba, have finished you off out of friendship so that you would stop weeping, writhing, contorting yourself in an effort to put back into your belly what had come out of it and was sucking at the air like a freshly caught fish. God's truth. I was inhuman. I didn't listen to my friend. I listened to my enemy. So when I capture the enemy from the other side, when I read in his blue eyes the screams his mouth cancelling into the skies of war, when his open belly has become nothing more than a pulp of raw blue. I turn back the cloth, I finish off the enemy. As soon as he has made a second plea with his eyes, I slit his throat like a sacrificial lamb. What I didn't do for Madame Diop, I do for my blue eyed enemy, out of my reclaimed humanity. And then I take his rifle after cutting off his right hand with my machete. It takes a long time and is very, very difficult. When I crawl home, sleeping under barbed wire between wooden posts rising from the viscous mud, when I come home to our trench that's spread open like a woman facing the sky, I'm covered with the blood of the enemy from the other side. I'm like a statue made of mud and blood mixed together, and I sting so badly even the rats flee. My stench is the stench of death. Death has the stench of the inside body turned outside its sacred vessel. In the open air, the inside body of any human being or animal becomes corrupted, from the richest man to the poorest, from the most beautiful woman to the ugliest, from the most feral animal to the most harmless, from the most powerful to the weakest. Death is the stench of the decomposed inside of the body, and even the rats are afraid when they smell me coming crawling beneath the barbed wire. They dread the sight of death moving, advancing toward them. So they flee. They flee at home in the trench too, even after I wash my body and my clothes, even when I think I have purified myself. My trench mates, my war brothers, began to fear me after the fourth hand. At first, they laughed with me heartily. They enjoyed watching me come home with a rifle and an enemy hand. They were so pleased with me. They even thought of giving me another medal. But after the fourth enemy hand, they no longer laughed so easily. The white soldiers were beginning to say, I could read it in their eyes. This chocolate is really strange. The others, chocolate soldiers from West Africa like me, began to say, and I also read it in their eyes. This Alpha Nadia from the village of Gandiol near St. Louis in Senegal is strange. When did he become so strange? The taubas and the chocolates, as the captain called them, continued to slap me on the shoulder, but their laughter and their smiles had changed. They began to be very, very afraid of me. They began to whisper right after the fourth enemy hand. For the first three hands, I was a legend. They cheered me when I returned. They fed me delicacies, offered me tobacco, helped me rinse off with big buckets of water, helped me clean my uniform. I saw in their eyes that they understood. I was performing in their place the grotesque savage, the enlisted savage obeying orders. The enemy on the other side should be trembling his boot and under his helmet. In the beginning, my war brothers weren't bothered by my stench of death, the stench of butcher of human flesh. But beginning with the fourth hand, they avoided smelling me. They continued to give me delicacies, to offer me bits of tobacco they had collected from here or there to lend me a blanket to warm myself, but with a fake smile plastered on their terrified soldiers' faces. They no longer help me rinse myself with big buckets. They let me clean my uniform myself. Suddenly, nobody else was slapping me on the shoulder and laughing. God's truth, I became untouchable. So they set aside a bowl, a cup, a fork, and a spoon for me that they kept in a corner of our dugout. When I came home very late at night on battle days, long after the hours, others, never mind the wind, rain, or snow, as the captain said, the cook would tell me to get, to go get my things. When he served me soup, he was very, very careful that his ladle not touch the interior, the sides, or the rim of my bowl. The rumor spread, it spread, and as it spread, it shed its clothes and eventually its shame. Well dressed at the beginning, well appointed at the beginning, well outfitted, well medaled. The brazen rumor ended up with her legs spread, her ass in the air. I didn't notice it right away. I didn't recognize the change. I didn't know what she was plotting. Everyone had seen her, but no one described her to me. I finally caught wind of the whispers and learned that my strangeness had been transformed into madness, and madness into witchcraft. Soldier, sorcerer. Don't tell me that we don't need madness on the battlefield. God's truth, the mad fear nothing. The others, white or black, play at being mad, perform madness so that they can calmly throw themselves in front of the bullets of the enemy on the other side. It allows them to run straight at death without being too afraid. You would have to be mad to obey Captain Armand when he whistles for the attack, knowing there is almost no chance you will come home alive. God's truth. You would have to be crazy to drag yourself screaming out of the belly of the earth. The bullets from the enemy on the other side, the giant seeds falling from the metallic sky. They aren't afraid of screams if they aren't afraid to pass through heads, flesh, to break bonds and to sever lives. Temporary madness makes it possible to forget the truth about bullets. Temporary madness in war is bravery's sister. But when you seem crazy all the time, continuously, without stopping, that's when you make people afraid, even your own war brothers. And that's when you stop being the brave one, the death defier, and become instead the true friend of death, its accomplice, its more than brother. For everyone, for the soldiers, both black and white, I have become death. I know this, I understand. Whether to barb soldiers or chocolate soldiers like me, they think I am a sorcerer, a devourer of people's insides, a gem. They think I've always been one, but that the war has revealed it. The rumor, stark naked now, claimed I had eaten the insides of Madame Diop, my more than brother, before he was even dead. The brazen rumor said that I should be feared. The rumor spread lead and as in air said that I devoured the insides of the enemies from the other side, but also the insides of friends. The obscene rumor said, "Beware, watch out. What does he do with the severed hands? He shows them to us and then they disappear. Beware, watch out." God's truth, I, Alpha, the youngest child of the old man. So the rumor chased after me, half naked, shameless, like a fallen woman. And yet the Tobabs and the chocolates who watched the rumor chase me, who lifted her skirt as she passed, who pinched her ass, snickering, continued to smile at me, to talk to me as if nothing was wrong, friendly on the outside, but terrorized on the inside, even the toughest, even the hardest, even the bravest. When the captain whistled for us to surge out of the belly of the earth so that we could throw ourselves like savages, temporary madmen, on the enemy's little iron seats that were oblivious to our shrieks, nobody would take their place beside me. No one would dare rub shoulders with me any more in the cacophony of war, leaping from the earth's hot entrails. No one wanted to be next to me when they fell to the bullets from the other side. God's truth, now I was in the war alone. That's how the enemy hands earn me my solitude, beginning with the fourth. Solitude in the midst of smiles, wings, encouragement from my trench mates, black or white. God's truth, nobody wanted to attack the evil eye of a soldier, sorcerer, the shit luck of death's best friend. I know this, I understand. They don't think much, but when they think in dualistic terms. I have read it in their eyes. They think devourers of human insides are good so long as they devour only the enemy's insides. But devourers of souls are no good when they eat the insides of their trench mates. With soldiers, sorcerers, you never know. My trench mates believe they have to be very, very careful with soldiers, sorcerers. They have to manage them carefully, to smile, to be friendly, to talk casually to them about this and that, but from afar, never to approach them, touch them, brush against them, or it's certain death, it's the end. It's why, after the first few hands, whenever Captain Armand whistled for the attack, they kept themselves 10 large steps away from either side of me. Some of them, just before they would leap screaming from the earth's hot entrails, would avoid even looking at me, letting their eyes fall on me, glancing at me at all, as if to look at me where was to touch the face, arms, hands, back, ears, legs of death, as if to look at me was to die. Humans are always finding absurd explanations for things. I know this. I understand it. Now that I am able to think what I want, my brothers in combat, white or black, need to believe that it is in the war that will kill them, but the evil eye. They need to believe that it won't be one of the thousands of bullets fired by the enemy from the other side that will randomly kill them. They don't like randomness. Randomness is too absurd. They want someone to blame. They would rather think that the enemy bullet that hits them was directed, guided by some cruel malevolent with evil intent. They believe that this cruel, malevolent, evil intention one is me, God's truth. Their thinking is weak, flimsy, They think that if I am alive after all these attacks, if no bullets has hit me, it's because I am a soldier sorcerer. They think the worst. They say that many of their trench mates have been hit by bullets that were meant for me. This is why some of them smile hypocritically at me. It's why others looked away when I appeared. Why still others closed their eyes to keep them from falling on me, from grazing me. I became taboo like a totem. The totem of Diops, of Mademba Diop, that egotist is a peacock. He said, peacock, and I replied, crown, crane. I said, your totem is a fowl, while mine is a wild cat, and Nandie's totem is the lion. It's nobler than the totem of the Diops. I let myself repeat to my more than brother Ademba Diop that his totem was laughable. The jockeying relationship between us had replaced the war, the feud between our two families, between our family names. The jockeying relationship between us succeeded in cleansing old insults with laughter and mockery. But a totem is more serious. A totem is taboo. You can't eat it. You have to protect it. The Diops would risk their lives protecting a peacock in danger or a crown crane about to die because it's their totem. The Nadies don't need to protect lions from danger. A lion is never in danger, but it is said that lions never eat nadies. The protection goes in both directions. I can't help but laugh when I think that the Diops are hardly in danger of being eaten by a peacock or a crowned crane. I can't help but smile when I think again of Mademba Diop laughing when I told him that the Diops weren't very smart for having chosen the peacock or the crown crane as a totem. The Diops are short sighted egotists like peacocks. They act proud, but their totem is just an arrogant fowl. This is what made Mademba laugh when I tried to make fun of him. Mademba simply replied that you don't choose your totem, it chooses you. Unfortunately, I brought up his arrogant foul totem again on the morning of his death, not long before Captain Armand whistled for the attack, and that's why he left before the others, why he shot out of the earth, shrieking toward the enemy on the other side to show us, me and the trench, that he was not a braggart, that he was brave. It's because of me that he left first. It's because of totems, because of our jockeying relationship, because of me that Madame Diop was disemboweled by a half dead, blue eyed enemy on that day. On that day, Madame Diop wasn't thinking. Despite all of his learning, all of his science, I know, I understand. I shouldn't have made fun of his daughter. Until that day, I didn't think enough. I didn't reflect on half of what I said. You don't provoke your friend, your more than brother, to leave the belly of the earth screaming louder than anyone else. You don't drag your more than brother into temporary madness, into a place where a crown crane couldn't last an instant, into a battlefield where not even the smallest plant can grow, not even the slightest shrub, as if thousands of locusts have been gorging themselves without rest, month after month. A field sowed with thousands of tiny metallic seeds of war, that produce no harvest, a scarred battlefield made for carnivores. So here we are. Since I decided to think for myself, not to forbid myself any subject, I've come to understand that it was in the blue-eyed enemy from the other side who killed Mademba. It's me. I know. I understand why I didn't kill Mademba Diop when he begged me to. You can't kill a man twice. A very, very quiet voice in my mind must have murmured to me. You already killed your childhood friend. It must have whispered to me when you mocked his totem on a battle day and he leapt first from the belly of the earth. Wait a bit, my mind must have whispered in a very, very low voice. Wait a bit. Soon, when Mademba will be dead without your help, you will understand. You will understand that you didn't kill him even though he asked you to, so as not to blame yourself for having finished the filthy job you began. Wait a bit, my mind must have whispered. Soon you will understand that you were Mademba Diop's blue-eyed enemy. You kill him with your words. Your, you disembowel him with your words. You devour the insides of his body with your words. From there to the thought that I am a damned, a devourer of souls, there is hardly any distance, any air, since I have thought anything I want since then. I can admit everything to myself in the privacy of my mind. Yes, I told myself that I must be a dam, an eater of the insides of men. But I told myself immediately after thinking it that I couldn't believe such a thing, that it was impossible. At that time, it wasn't really me who was thinking. I had left the door of my mind open to the thoughts of others, which I mistook for my own. I wasn't hearing myself think any more, but was hearing the others who were afraid of me. You have to be careful when you believe you are free to think what you want, not to let in the thinking of others in disguise. The false thinking of your father and mother, the spurious thinking of your grandfather, the mass thinking of your brother or sister, of your friends, in other words, of your enemies. So I am not a damn. I'm not a devourer of souls. That's what the people who are afraid of me think. I am also not a savage. It's my Tubab surgeon and my blue-eyed enemies who think that. The thinking that is mine, the thinking that belongs to me, is that my mockery, my hurtful words about his totem are the true cause of Madamba's death. It's because of my big mouth that he leapt shrieking from the belly of the earth to show me what I already knew, that he was brave. The question to answer is why I laughed at the totem of my more than brother. The question to answer is why my mind hatched words as sharp as a locust bite on the day of attack. Because I loved Mademba, my more than brother. God's truth, I loved him so. I was so afraid he would die. I wanted so badly for the two of us to return safe and sound to Gandion. I would have done anything to keep him alive. I followed him everywhere on the battlefield. As soon as Captain Armand would whistle for the attack as so as to fully warn the enemy from the other side that we were about to come out shrieking from the belly of the earth, so as to warn the enemy to prepare to spray us with bullets. I would glue myself to Mademba so the bullet that hurt him would hurt me, or the bullet that killed him would kill me, or the bullet that missed him would miss me. God's truth. On attack days, we were elbow to elbow on the battlefield, shoulder to shoulder. We ran shrieking toward the enemy on the other side in the same rhythm. We fired our guns at the same time. We were like twin brothers who come out the same day or the same night from their mother's womb. And so, God's truth, I don't understand. No, I don't understand why one fine day I insinuated to Madame Diop that he wasn't brave, that he wasn't a real warrior. To think for oneself doesn't necessarily mean to understand everything. God's truth. I don't understand why one fine day of bloody battle, without rhyme or reason, when I hoped we would return safe and sound, he and I, to Gandiol after the war, I killed Mademba Diop with my words I do not understand at all. After the seventh severed hand, they would they had had enough. They had all had enough. The Tobab soldiers and the Chocolate soldiers, the sergeants and the not sergeants. Captain Armand said that I must be tired, that I must rest. To tell me this, he called me to his dugout. It happened in the presence of a chocolate much older than me, higher ranked, a chocolate with a Croix de Guerre and his heart in his boots, a Croix de Guerre chocolate, who translated whatever the captain wanted into Wolof, a poor old Croix de Guerre chocolate, who thought, as did the others, that I was a gem, a devourer of souls, who trembled like a little leaf in the wind without daring to look at me, his left hand gripping a talisman in his pocket. Like the others, he was afraid that I would devour the insides of his body, that I would bring him to his death. Like the others, white or black, the infantryman Ibrahima Sek trembled when our eyes met. That night he prayed silently for a long time. That night he fingered his wari beads for a long time to protect himself from me and from my contamination. That night he purified himself as he stood listening. The elder Ibrahima Sek was terrified to have translate the captain's words for me, God's truth. He was terrified to inform me that I was being given exceptional permission to spend an entire month at the rear because in Ibrahima Sek's mind, what the captain ordered couldn't come as good news to me because my elder, the Croix de Guerre chocolate, believed I wouldn't be happy to learn that I was being separated from my larder, from my prey, from my hunting ground. In Ibrahima Sek's mind, a sorcerer like me would certainly be very, very angry at the bearer of this bad news. God's truth. It would be no easy thing to escape a soldier sorcerer you have deprived of an entire month of prey, whom you have deprived of souls, friend or foe, to devour on the battlefield. In Ibrahim Sek's mind, I must be holding him responsible for the loss of all the insides of soldiers, friend or foe I could have eaten, and so to distance himself from my evil eye, to shield himself from the consequences of my anger, to be able to show his grandchildren one day his Croix de Guerre, the elder Ibrahim Sek began each of his sentences with the same words. The captain says, the captain says that you need to rest. The captain says that you are really very, very brave, but also very, very tired. The captain says that he salutes your courage, your very, very profound courage. The captain says that you are going to be given the Croix de Guerre like me. Ah, you already have one. The captain says maybe you are going to get another one. So yes, I know, I understand that Captain Armand. no longer wanted me on the battlefield. Behind the words reported by the elder Croix de Guerre Chocolat Ibrahima Sek, I knew, I understood that they had had enough after the seven severed hands I brought home. Yes, I understand God's truth that on the battlefield they wanted only fleeting madness, madmen of rage, madmen of pain, furious madmen, but temporary ones. No continuous madmen. As soon as the fighting ends, we are to file away our rage, our pain, and our fury. Pain is tolerated. We can bring our pain home on the condition that we keep it to ourselves. But rage and fury cannot be brought back to the trench. Before returning home, we must denude ourselves of rage and fury. We must strip ourselves of it. And if we don't, we are no longer playing the game of war. Madness after the captain blows the whistle to retreat is taboo. I understood that the captain and Ibrahima Sek, the chocolate infantryman with the Croix de Guerre, didn't want any warriors rage in our midst. God's truth. I understood that for them, with my seven severed hands, it was as if I had brought back screams and mourns into a place of calm. It was impossible for them, seeing the severed hand of an enemy from the other side, to keep from thinking. And if it were mine, it was impossible for them to keep themselves from thinking. I have had enough of this war. God's truth. After battle, we became human again for the enemy. We can't celebrate the fear of the enemy from the other side. For long, when we ourselves are afraid, the severed hands are our fear, brought inside from outside the trench. The captain says that he thanks you again for your bravery. The captain says that you have been granted a month of leave. The captain says that he would like to know where you have hidden put the severed hands. And so, without hesitating, I heard myself reply, I no longer have the hands. God's truth. The captain and my elder Ibrahima Sek took me for an idiot. I may be a little strange, but I'm no idiot. I will never reveal where I hid my severed hands. They are my hands. I know which blue eyes they belong to. I know the provenance of each one. They had had blonde or red hair on their backs, rarely black. Some were fleshy, others flaky. Their nails turned black after I separated them from their arms. One hand is smaller than the others, as if it were a woman's or a large child's. Little by little, they became stiff before rotting. So, to preserve them, after the second one, I slipped into the kitchen of the trench we call home. I sprinkled them very, very heavily with coarse salt, and I placed them in the cooling oven beneath the still warm ash. I left them there for an entire night. In the morning, very, very early, I went to retrieve them. Then the next day, I put them in the same place after having salted them again and again and again until they became like dried fish. I dried the hands of the blue eyes the way at home we dry fish we want to preserve. Now my seven hands out of eight. I am missing one thanks to Jean Baptiste pranks. Now my seven hands have lost their individual characteristics. They are all the same, tanned and smooth like camel leather. They have no more hair, blonde or red or black. God's truth, they have no red spots or beauty marks. They are all a dark brown, mummified. There is no chance their flesh will rot now. Nobody will be able to sniff them out except the rats. they are in a safe place. I thought how I had only seven because my friend Jean Baptiste, the trickster, the joker, had stolen one, and I had left him because it was my first severed hand and it was beginning to rot. I didn't know yet what to do with it. I hadn't yet had the idea to dry them with the way the fishermen's wives in Gandiol dry fish. In Gandiol, we dry fish from the river or the sea in the sun and with smoke after salting it very, very well. Here there isn't any real sun. There is only a cold sun that doesn't dry anything. Mud remains mud, blood never dries. Our uniforms only dry by the fire. That's why we make fires, not only to dry, to warm ourselves, mostly to dry ourselves. But our fires in the trench are minuscule. Big fires are forbidden, the captain said, because there is no smoke without fire. The captain said, as soon as they see smoke rising from our home, as soon as they notice the smallest thread of smoke, even from a cigarette, with their piercing blue eyes, the enemies on the other side will adjust their artillery and bombard us like us, the enemy on the other side bombards trenches at random. Like us, the enemy launches random salvos even on truce days when there are no infantry attacks. So best not to provide any targets to the enemy artillerymen. So God's truth, best to avoid revealing our position with the blue smoke from a fire. So now our uniforms are never dry. So now our dirty uniforms and all of our clothes are always damp. So we try to make small fires without smoke. We position the kitchen stove pipe at the rear. So God's truth, we try to be cleverer than our enemy with the piercing blue eyes. And so the kitchen stove was the only place where I could dry the hands. God's truth, I saved them all, even the second and the third, which were already half gone. At first, my trench mates were so happy that I was bringing them enemy hands. They even touched them from the first to the third. They dared to touch them. Some even spit on them, laughing. By the time I returned to the belly of the earth with my second enemy hand, my friend Jean Baptiste had rifled through my things. He had stolen my first hand, and I let him because it was beginning to spoil and to attract rats. I never liked the first hand, it wasn't pretty. It had long red hairs on its backside, and I had cut it off poorly. I had severed it roughly from the arm because I hadn't yet formed the habit. God's truth, my machete wasn't sharp enough yet. But then, with experience, by the fourth one, I was able to separate the hand from an enemy arm in a single slice, in a single very clean cut with the blade of my machete that I spent hours sharpening before the captain would whistle for us to attack. So my friend Jean Baptiste rifled through my things to steal the first enemy hand, which I didn't like. Jean Baptiste was my only real white friend in the trench. He was the only true Bob who came to console me after the death of Mademba Diop. The others had touched my shoulder. The chocolates had recited ritual prayers before they took Mademba's body to the rear. The chocolate soldiers didn't speak to me again about it because then Mademba's was one death amongst the rest. They too had lost friends more than brothers. They too wept inside for their dead. Only Jean Baptiste had done more than a place a hand on my shoulder when I brought Madame Diop's disemboweled body back to the trench. Jean Baptiste, with his round head and his clear blue eyes, had taken care of me. Jean Baptiste, with his narrow waist and small hands, had helped me to wash my dirty clothes. Jean Baptiste had given me tobacco. Jean Baptiste had shared his bread with me. Jean Baptiste had made me laugh. And so, when Jean Baptiste rifled through my things to steal my first enemy hand, I let him do it. Jean Baptiste had a lot of fun with that severed hand. Jean Baptiste laughed a lot with the enemy hand that had begun to rot. From the first morning when he stole it from that first breakfast, he shook all of our hands with that hand, one after the other, and when he saluted any of us, we understood that he was extending the severed hand of the enemy instead of his own, which was hidden beneath the sleeve of his uniform. It was Albert who got stuck with the enemy hand. Albert screamed when he realized that Jean Baptiste had left the enemy hand behind his. Albert he screamed even as he threw the enemy hand on the ground, and everyone laughed and everyone made fun of him, even non-commissioned officers and even the captain. God's truth. So Jean Baptiste cried out, "Bunch of idiots! Every one of you has shaken the hand of the enemy. You will all be court-martialed." So everyone laughed again, even the elder Croix de Guerre, Chocolat Ibrahima Sek, who translated for us what Jean Baptiste had said. But God's truth, that first severed hand brought no luck to Jean Baptiste. Jean Baptiste didn't stay my friend for long, not because we stopped liking each other, but because Jean Baptiste died. He died a very, very ugly death. He died with my enemy hand attached to his helmet. Jean Baptiste liked to joke, to play the idiot too much. There are limits. It isn't good to play with the hands of the blue-eyed enemy in front of enemies with blue eyes, doubled by binoculars. Jean Baptiste shouldn't have provoked them. He shouldn't have made fun of them. The enemies from the other side resented him. They don't like seeing their friend's hand stuck to the point of Rosalie bayonet. They were sick and tired of watching it wave in the sky above our trench. God's truth, they had enough of Jean Baptiste antics, like when he would cry out at the top of his lungs with a friend's hand on the end of his bayonet, "Fill the crowds, fill the crowds." It was as if Jean Baptiste had gone mad, and I understood why. Jean Baptiste had become a provocateur. Jean Baptiste had been trying to draw the attention of the blue eyed enemies behind their binoculars ever since he received a certain perfume letter. I understood. When I saw his face as he read that letter, Jean Baptiste's face was alive with laughter and light before he opened the perfume letter. When he finished reading the perfume letter, Jean Baptiste's face had become grey. No more light, only the laugh remained. But his laugh was no longer a laugh of happiness. His laugh had become the laugh of misery, a laugh that was like tears, an unpleasant laugh, a false laugh. After the perfumed letter, Jean Baptiste helped himself to my first enemy hand so he could make crude gestures at the enemies on the other side. Jean Baptiste made asses of them by waving it in the sky above our trench, stuck on the end of his rifle's Rosalie. The enemy hand whose middle finger he had raised, he would yell, "Up your ass, crowds, go fuck yourself," shaking his rifle so that the enemy's smashing blue eyes would be sure to receive his message. so that there was no way his middle finger would go unnoticed. Captain Armand told him to stop, to act like Jean Baptiste wasn't good for anyone. Jean Baptiste might as well be setting fires inside the trench. His insults had the power of smoke, the power to help the enemy from the other side adjust their aim. It was as if he had given himself over to the enemy. There was no point in dying if it wasn't at the captain's command. God's truth, I knew, I understood, as did the captain and the others, that Jean Baptiste wanted to die, to torment the blue eyed enemies and become their target. So one morning, after our captain whistled for the attack, when we leapt shrieking from the belly of the earth, the blue eyed enemies didn't fire immediately. The blue eyed enemies waited 20 breaths before firing on us. The time it took to identify Jean Baptiste, God's truth, to identify him, at least 20 breaths. I know, I understood. We all understood why they waited before firing on us. The blue eyed enemies, the captain said, held a grudge against Jean Baptiste. God's truth. They had had enough of hearing him shout up yours crowds with their friends and stuck to the end of a rosary bayonet, waving in the sky above our trench. The enemies on the other side were intent on killing Jean Baptiste the next time the French attacked. They said to themselves, we are going to kill that one in particularly disgusting way to set an example. And that idiot Jean Baptiste, who had made it clear that he wanted to die at any cost, did all he could to facilitate the task. He attached the enemy hand to the front of his helmet, and as it continued to rot, he wrapped it in gauze. He turbaned it, as the captain said, in white gauze, one figure at a time, and Jean Baptiste did a very good job because you could see it very clearly. The hand attached to the front of his helmet, its middle finger up in the air, the others folded down. The enemies with matching blue eyes didn't have a hard time identifying him. They had binoculars. In their binoculars, they saw a white spot on the top of a slender soldier's helmet that must have taken 5 breaths. They adjusted their binoculars and they saw that the small white spot was giving them the finger. 5 more halting breaths, but to perfect their arm must have taken longer, 10 slow breaths at least, because they were so angry at Jean Baptiste for mocking them with their friend's hand. But they were ready. And as soon as they saw him in their cannon scope, 20 breaths after our captain's whistle, they must have been happy. The enemies on the other side, and they must have been very, very happy then. Through their binoculars, they saw Jean Baptiste head fly off, his head, his helmet, and the enemy hand he had attached to it pulverized. That must have made them so happy, the enemies with their matching blue eyes, to see their dishonor pulverized along with the culprit's head. God's truth, they must have offered tobacco to whoever pulled off such a beautiful feat. As soon as our attack was over, they must have slapped him on the shoulder, passed him a drink, they must have applauded him for his perfect shot. They might have even written a song in his honor. God's truth, it might have been this song in his honor that I heard rise from their trench the evening of the attack in which Jean Baptiste died, the evening when, for the fourth time, I severed the hand of an enemy from the other side, after placing the insides of his body outside in the heart of La Terre Personae, no man's land, as the captain said. I heard the singing of the enemies with marching blue eyes very clearly because that evening I happened to be right next to their trench. God's truth, I had crawled right up to them without their seeing me, and I waited until they had finished singing before I caught one. I waited until silence fell, until they had relaxed, and I extracted one like you would extract a tiny baby from its mother's belly. With a violent tenderness to minimize the shock, to minimize the sound, I did it this way because I wanted to catch the master artilleryman who had killed Jean Baptiste. That evening, God's truth, I took many risks to avenge my friend Jean Baptiste, who had wanted to die because of a perfume letter. I crawled for hours beneath the barbed wire to get right next to their trench. I covered myself in mud so they wouldn't see me. Immediately after the shell that decapitated Jean Baptiste, I threw myself on the ground and crawled for hours in the mud. Captain Armand had long since whistled for the attack to end when I arrived right next to the enemy trench, which was also open like the sex of an enormous woman, a woman the size of the earth. So I moved even closer to the edge of the enemy domain, and then I waited for a long time. They sang the songs of men, the songs of soldiers beneath the stars. I waited until they fell asleep, except one, except one who had leaned up against the wall of the trench to smoke. You shouldn't smoke in a war. The enemy will spot you. I spotted him because of his tobacco smoke. Thanks to the blue smoke that rose into the sky from his trench. God's truth, I took an enormous risk. As soon as I noticed a few steps to my left, the blue smoke rising into the black sky, I slipped like a snake along the side of the trench. I was covered with mud from head to toe. I was like the mamba snake that takes on the color of the earth on which it slithers. I was invisible and I slid as fast as I could to get myself right next to the blue smoke the enemy soldier was blowing into the black air. I really took a big risk, and that's why what I did that night for my white friend who wanted to die at war, I did only once. Without knowing what was happening in the trench, without being able to see a thing, I slung my head and my arms into the enemy's trench. I blindly dangled the top half of my body into the trench to capture the blue-eyed enemy was mocking below me. God's truth, I was lucky the trench had no roof in that spot. I was lucky the enemy soldier who was blowing blue smoke into the black sky was alone. I was lucky to be able to clap my hand over his mouth before he had a chance to scream. God's truth, I lucked out that the proprietor of my fourth trophy was a small and light like a child of 15 or 16. In my collection of hands, he gave me the smallest one. I was lucky that night not to be spotted by friends, by the trench mates of the little blue eyed soldier. They must all have been sleeping, worn out by the day's attack in which Jean Baptiste was killed first by the master artilleryman. After Jean Baptiste's head fell, they had continued to fire, enraged without stopping to breathe. Many of my trench mates died on that day, but I managed to run, to fire, to throw myself on my belly and crawl beneath the barbed wire, firing as I ran, throwing myself on my belly and crawling into La Touré Personne, no man's land, as the captain said. God's truth. The enemy on the other side were very tired that night. They lowered their guard after sleeping. I don't know why the little enemy soldier was sin tired that night. Why he went to smoke his tobacco after his trench mates had gone to sleep. God's truth. It was fate that made me capture him and not someone else. It was written on high that it would be him I would find in the middle of the night in the hot pit of the enemy trench. Now I know. I understand that nothing is simple about what's written on high. I know. I understand, but I don't tell anyone because now I think what I want for no one but myself. Ever since Madame Diop died, I believe I understand that was what's written on high is only a copy of what man writes here below. God's truth, I believe that God always lags behind us. Is all he can do to us is the damage. He couldn't have wanted me to catch the little blue-eyed soldier in the hot pit of the enemy trench. I don't believe the proprietor of the fourth hand in my collection had done anything wrong. I could read it in his blue eyes when I got at him in a lateral personae, no man's land, as the captain said. I could see in his eyes that he was a good boy, a good son, still too young to have known a woman, but a good future husband, certainly. And here I had to fall on him like death and destruction on innocence. That's war. It's when God lags behind the music of men, when he can't untangle the threads of so many fates. At the same time, God's truth. You can't blame God, who is to say he didn't want to punish the parents of the little enemy soldier by making him die at war by my black hand. Who is to say he didn't want to punish the little enemy soldiers' grandparents because he would run out of time to redress the suffering they had caused their own children? Who is to say God's truth? God may have lagged behind in his punishment of the little enemy soldier family. I'm very well positioned to know that he did punish them gravely by punishing their son or grandson, because the little enemy soldier suffered as did the others when I extracted the insides of his body to expose them to the air outside in a little pile next to his still living body. But I really did come to pity him very, very quickly. I minimized the punishment through him of his grandparents or parents, and I let him beg me only once, tears in eyes, before I finished him off. He could not have been the one who disemboweled my more than brother Mademba Diop. He also could not have been the one who pulverized with a single shell the head of my friend Jean Baptiste, the joker driven to despair by a perfumed letter. And maybe the little blue-eyed enemy soldier was standing guard when I threw myself headfirst into the hot trench, arms outstretched without knowing who I would catch. I carried him out with his gun hitched to his shoulder. A soldier standing guard shooting smoke. Any blue smoke in the darkest night is visible. That's how I spotted him, my little blue-eyed soldier, proprietor of my fourth trophy, of my fourth hand. But God's truth, I pitied him in no man's land. I killed him as soon as he begged me, once with his blue eyes filled with tears. It was God who had made him stand guard. It was after I returned to the trench that was our home with my fourth small hand and the gun in it had clean oil loaded and fired that my soldier friends, white and black, avoided me like the plague. When I returned home, crawling in the mud like a black mamba, returning to its rest after rat hunting, no one dared touch me any more. No one was happy to see me. They must have believed that the first hand brought bad luck to that it had fooled Jean Baptiste and that the evil eye would fall on anyone who touched me or even looked at me. And Jean Baptiste wasn't there anymore to rally the others to rejoice at seeing me return alive. Everything is double. One side good, one bad. Jean Baptiste, when he was alive, still alive, showed me others the good side of my trophies. Look, here is our Pal Alpha with another hand and the rifle that goes with it. Let's celebrate, friends. This means fewer crowd bullets aimed at us, fewer crowd hands, fewer crowd bullets. Glory to Alpha. That's how the rest of the soldiers, black or white, chocolate or tubab, were rallied to congratulate me for having brought back my trophies to our dark trench open to the sky. They all applauded me up to the third hand. I was courageous. I was a force of nature, like the captain said many times. God's truth. They gave me good things to eat. They helped me clean up. Above all, Jean Baptiste, who liked me. But on the night Jean Baptiste died, when I returned to our trench, the way a mamba slithers back into his nest after the hunt, they avoided me like the plague. The bad side of my crimes had won out over the good side. The chocolate soldiers began to whisper that I was a soldier, sorcerer, a dam, a devourer of souls, and the white Tubab soldiers were starting to believe them. God's truth, each thing carries its opposite within. Up to the third hand, I was a war hero. Beginning with the fourth, I became a dangerous madman, a bloodthirsty savage. God's truth, that's how things go. That's how the world is. Each thing is double. With that, we come to the end of today's reading session. We have finished so far 12 chapters from All At Night, All Blood is Black by David Diop. From chapter 13 onwards will be read tomorrow. Thanks a lot for listening. Please read loudly. Go reading for hours so that you learn a lot, acquire a lot of knowledge, improve your reading skills, and have a very good accent, stress, and pronunciation. Have a wonderful day, everybody. May God bless you. Good morning.